Hello everyone, and welcome to 3D Code Basics. And let's take a look at how to set up 3D Code for voxel sculpting. And let's set it up so that we can sculpt in 3D Code in voxel mode and surface mode. Here we are in 3D Code. 3D Code or any kind of sculpting program, it's best to use a tablet of some sort, especially one that has pressure sensitivity. Now you don't need to have a tablet. You could use a regular mouse and keyboard like everyone else. And once starting 3D Code, you would encounter this menu, the startup menu. Now this menu gives you different things that you can do in 3D Code. You could do like an AI assistant, we could check that out at some point. And you could go into voxel sculpting, then it has surface sculpting. Now surface sculpting is more like how ZBrush and Blender would kind of default behave. Voxel sculpting, the one above it, is kind of like the strength of 3D Code. And voxels are a really nice way to work on sculpting in 3D Code because it kind of feels much more like clay. So let's jump into voxel sculpting. So we're going to click on that, and here you come up with different ways you could go about doing voxel sculpting. You can start with an empty scene. That's what this one here is for. Also here you have three different kinds of spheres. You have a small, medium, and a large. Or you could start with like a voxel box or voxel cylinder. And they even have a mannequin, right? So you have like two types of mannequin. This one is a little bit of a posable mannequin where you could pose him into a specific pose, and then you could start sculpting. Or you could do it a solid T pose, kind of mannequin human, and you can start sculpting this T pose character to make your own character. Or you have a bust, right, where you could start with a base mesh kind of head, and you could sculpt like a face of a character that you want. Let's start by setting up 3D Code in this tutorial, right? So we're going to click on the empty scene. Okay, and it's going to switch us over to the sculpting room, and it's going to put us in voxel mode, right? If you look to the top of 3D Code, like right to the top up here, I could probably zoom into there real quick, right? You see you have these different tabs. One is for the paint room, this one here, the top one. Then you have the UV room, if you look. Then you have the retopo room, where you could do retopology of your sculpt so that you could paint on the sculpt and put bones in it in other programs like Blender and Maya, 3D Studio Max, and Softimage XSI to animate your character. Or you could sculpt, which that's the room that we're in right now, because you see how it's highlighted. And we won't get into any of these in this tutorial here, guys. We'll just set up the sculpt room for now, so that once you open 3D Code, you can kind of get started. So let's do that. Let's start by setting up 3D Code for voxel sculpting. The first thing to get would be a custom shelf, so you could store all the tools that you would need to do voxel sculpting. So to get that preset or custom shelf, you have to go up into Windows right here, then go to Panels, and you're going to look for Presets. And it'll bring up this empty window right here called Presets. Now in here we have a default tab, and once you start adding different brushes and different objects that you want, you could add them into this default tab, or you can make a new one. Let's make a new tab that makes sense, and let's call it sculpting. So we're going to click on this plus right here. In the presets, it's going to say new folder, and we're going to call the new folder sculpting. Press enter. Okay, so now it made a sculpting folder, a sculpting tab right here. This is the tool options for any of these brushes that we have selected here. So right now we're in the base clay brush under the clay engine tab, and it shows us all the tool options for it right here. Let's bring in like a simple primitive so that we could sculpt on it, and we could make it into anything that we want. So to do that, you have to scroll down in this menu, and we're going to scroll down until we see objects, and then there's primitives. Or you can even import like your own 3D model, and it will make it into a voxel object. But let's start with their primitives. So we're going to click on this, right? And this is the first tool that we want. We want this primitives, tool right here. So we're going to add it to our presets. So we're going to click on the three dots over here in the presets menu, and we're gonna go add preset. Now if you look to the top here, it has all the top of 3D Code. There's a bunch of different objects that you could create using this primitive tool, right? For 3D, you can even add text. Now I have something to explain about voxels a little bit for you. So imagine this room is filled up with imaginary cubes. These invisible imaginary cubes are kind of like your pixels you would have like in Photoshop or the GIMP. You know, the more pixels you add to an image, the more detailed image you could create. So instead of those squares, imagine it's cubes. The thing about 3D Code, if I make this sphere right here at this size, it's going to be pretty low res. So if I go ahead and press apply right now, it's going to make a sphere that small. And if I make another sphere by applying, I'm going to choose this quick pick tool, which is a nice tool. It's kind of like a selection tool. So let's click on that tool and let's add it. It's under adjust and it's quick pick. And it's good to pick between objects or different things, but it's a nice default tool to have. Then go to the presets window, click the 3 dots, and I'm gonna add preset, and it added the quick pick. Because this one only could hold like a certain amount, and this one holds like at least 10 times what this is inside of it, so you could do more detail. That's how it works on the surface level. You could add more resolution to this small one. And the sculpture right here shows you the layers that you're creating your objects on. That's what this is. Right, so right now we're creating it on volume 5 here. And it says it's 1x, right? But this is like your starting resolution. If you want to add more resolution, you'd have to come down over here where it has this thing that looks like a grid square. If you click that, it will add more resolution to this layer. So if you look now, it now says 2 times. So it has 2 times the original resolution. So that's how we control resolution here in 3D Code. It gets a little deeper than that, but this is a good start. So let's get into some brushes so we can actually do some sculpting. To the right here, there's a shaders drop down here. And let's make these shader balls a little bit smaller. Let's go tiny. And this shaders is for visual shading. They're not actually coloring the object. They're more for you to see what your sculpt looks like as you sculpt it, and it's to show faults in your model and to make it visually easy for you to sculpt that red material. So what this does is to show all the imperfections in your sculpt as you sculpt it so that you could sculpt even better, right? So if you can make your sculpt look really good with this what I call a worst case scenario visual shader, right? And you make everything as smooth as you can and as neat as you can using this. Once you put a regular shader on or a regular material, whether it be here in 3D Code or in Blender, on your sculpt or on your retopo, it's going to look really, really good. Let's start with the base clay and see what this does, right? We're going to test each one out and see which one gives us a really nice result. And 3D Code, if you want to focus on any part of where you sculpt, you just have to press the F key wherever your cursor is. So if you look right here in your 3D viewport, there's like a thin border right here. You can see it. This thin border right here shows everything inside of it is active in the 3D viewport, and everything outside of here is to do with navigation. So if you put a cursor here and you move your mouse, you could rotate your view, or you could pan your view, or you could, and you could zoom in and out, in either one, whether you're in here by right clicking and zooming in and out, or you could do it here too. But having this border here helps. Okay, so let's start with the first brush. Let's see if it's worth storing into our presets panel. So the base clay, let's see what that does. So the base clay is from the clay engine. All right, so let's go here. Okay, and I'm using base clay right now, and it's not bad. It's good for a nice quick rough, but I don't like the way it's behaving right now. It feels kind of lumpy and that kind of thing. This off the bat, right? We could always come in and we could always adjust how each brush, right? We could adjust each brush have different tool options here, and we could adjust how it behaves. But let's just use the defaults, right? Because sometimes when you load a program, you just want to see what the defaults do, and to tweak the best of the defaults is great, and then we could go back into the other obscure brushes and make them even better. That's the tool. Let's go to the voxel tools, which is like the voxel brushes, and see how these behave across the sphere. So we're going to select Vox Clay, which is the first one, and let's see what Vox Clay does. Ooh, I like that. So So I'm just gonna come here and do this. No, I like how this behaves. It's nice and clean, it's not as lumpy. All right, so this is the brushes tab to our right, sorry, not left, to our right. And these are the different alphas you could use. Some brushes work with them and some brushes don't work with them. And 3D Coat will let you know which ones work with alphas and which ones doesn't. So let's go here and let's click on default. Okay, so these are all the defaults. So let's stick with this default. Now, the thing about like getting brushes and using different tools to sculpt, the least amount of brushes and tools that you use to start sculpting, the better off your sculpt is going to be, and the more focused, you know, and the faster you're going to be. So you want to use the least amount. So let's see what Build does. Let's try to use this button and see if the button is going to, yeah, so the button actually works. So this is a brush that uses alphas. I got to explain the things on top. So these are different behaviors for the brushes. Up here to the top left, by next to this T. So one cool brush to have is a smooth brush. Let's see what a smooth brush, how it behaves in voxels. So smooth brush is behaving pretty nice. It's smoothing things down pretty quickly. I think I like the surface smooth because it kind of gradually kind of smooths everything. I think the voxel one smooths it right away, like a little too quickly, and I think it also pulls the geometry around. So let's use the surface smooth for here. So we're going to save that. And talking about surface, let's look at surface clay. Surface clay is pretty nice. So if I can remember, so let's go here. Oh, look at that. That is beautiful right there, guys. Look at this. This is how you might wanna do some of your sculpting here with surface clay. And then the other big thing here under the surface brush tab would be flatten. Flatten is important. Flattening the surface and kind of polishing it at the same time. I love this one. So let's save this one. So let's see if like we want a nice sharp edge, you know, somewhere around here. So let's see which pinch works. So I think the smart pinch, what it does, it goes between roof pinch and, you know, kind of regular pinch. All right, so it is creating kind of like a roof pinch, which feels better to me, right? If you want to pinch, it should be that kind of pinch. Okay, it's not perfect, but we're gonna add this one. So we do have a smart pinch in there. So we're about to have all our brushes here, right? But when we're actually sculpting in the future, we only use a select few. One of the utility brushes I like to use is the fill under surface fill. So what that does is fill spaces, like how we have this space right here. So the surface fill kind of fills areas that have divots and holes and increases, it fills it up and tries to bring it to the surrounding, you know, height that you have. And it fills in holes and all that sort of stuff. So we're gonna save this one. Let's go fill, let's go add preset. We have the fill tool. Okay, another major tool that we need to add here would be the cutoff tool. So we just went under adjust, we went cut off, right? I'm gonna change the brush type from this a regular brush, polygon lasso. Okay, so we're gonna select that. And now if we just click, right, you get this green line and we could just drag. I like to do it for like the silhouettes of things. Okay, and we cut away. Right, we start cutting away at the model here with the cut off tool and using the polygon lasso brush here. Right, so in order to get symmetry, you have to go to the top of 3D Coat and then you'll see File, Edit, View, and then Symmetry. So if you click that, right, you want to click Symmetry and then go Toggle Symmetry. And then what you want to do is click on Symmetry itself. You want to press the S key and it brings up symmetry, and then you want to choose which axis, right? So I'm going to press the X axis. By whatever side that you brush on, you could mirror to the other side by making sure symmetry is on, and then you go up here to the geometry drop down here in the geometry menu, and then what you're going to look for, you're going to look for sim copy right here. It's going to copy whatever you're brushing on over to the other side. Okay, so this is the other brush here. It's called a split brush, and what this does is it's like pretty much like the cutoff tool, but whatever you cut off is going to split into a new object, right? And you could start cutting out the part that you think could be a helmet for him. You could sculpt on that separate thing as like a helmet, right? Or as hair, or whatever you want to do. And another brush, what I like to call a utility brush, just like the cutoff and the split, is the move brush. So this is the kind of brush that's very essential and you would use in ZBrush or even Blender. So let's click on that, and you can start, pulling and pushing. Anyways, guys, see this guy looks like he has gray hair or something. Let's turn the hair to like blue or something. Yeah, anyways. So this is how you set up 3D code for sculpting, guys. And we'll get deeper into it, hopefully, in the future. So that's all for now. So I just want to say thanks for everyone checking me out and checking out even even all the music that I've been doing, using xsinick, as a muse, and and just everything that we're trying to do here on the xsinick show. So but anyways, guys, have a good one. Check out 3D Code. It's a pretty neat program, and yeah, stay creative, and God bless you. And feel free to add comments or even send me a DM and the kind of things that you're working on that's pretty creative and that you're proud of. Okay, God bless, and bye bye.